Greetings, my empathetic friend. Today's video is gonna require some compassion. I have never been under any kind of belief that I wouldn't deal with difficult issues here on YouTube. That being said, they're not something that one usually looks forward to. Today's topic is no different. We're going to be delving into homelessness, or those experiencing homelessness here in the state of Maine, what it looks like, the effects of what that means, the consequences that follow, and possibly some solutions. This isn't really going to be a solution video. I do want this to be a series that I cover frequently. I want to go out to some of these encampments and get some interviews personally. I want to get out and look at things firsthand. As I've mentioned before, I stayed in Standing Rock, North Dakota in the winters of 2016 to 2017. So in a lot of senses, that was like being homeless. It was being homeless. I had a place to go back to, but in North Dakota, I didn't have a home. We were staying in tents in the winter in North Dakota on the prairies. There is very little to break the wind around you, including even just hills, let alone trees. So personally, I know what that's like. Here in Maine, it can be a little bit more forgiving than it was in North Dakota. However, on the coast, it is a big deal. So today's video it's probably not going to be short, but I want to, instead of just following headlines, I kind of want to dig into a headline and see all sides of it and then ponder it. And then in a future video, come back to it with some fresh insight, because this issue isn't going away. So we need to work together to try and figure out what we can do to prevent it. Because in today's economy, let's be honest, it could be any one of us at any time. So if you have a working body with a full-time job, just give thanks, be grateful, because not everyone does. And if you do have those things, well, if you have an able body and you don't have a full-time job, this is the time when we need you around us, just picking up the weight and carrying it. Because here in the state of Maine, all over the US, all over the world, but here in the state of Maine, where we deal with every single day, things are bad. We can't possibly hope to help the rest of the world, the rest of the nation, if we haven't helped ourselves first. So I hope you'll stick around with me. I know it's a little uncomfortable, but I think if we dig into this and we give it some full thought together and we think about it, and then we come back together and we see how different solutions, we come up with different mindsets on how we can solve this problem, because it's happening everywhere. But maybe the problem is that we're not talking about it enough. Maybe we're not giving it enough attention, because again, it could be any one of us. And once it's you and you're homeless, it's kind of hard to get the word out there like it was before you were homeless. So just keep a compassionate and empathetic heart, my friend, and let's get into this. Ooh, I'm greasy. All right, don't look too close. I've been working all day, haven't showered yet. That being said, you can't smell me, so back off. All right, so yeah, there's no easy way to get into what we're going to be getting into. So instead of just beating around the bush, let's get into it. This one is from 8 months ago. I just want to bring it up for relevant reasons.
Emergency shelter programs coming to an end now. Cities like Portland are finding...
Okay. Do I need to mute my mic during this time? I think that's why there was an echo last time. So I'm going to mute it until I need to speak. Maybe this is a good thing.
There's a huge need to house people without adequate resources available. So that means despite the cold and the wintry weather this week, dozens of people in that city alone are living outside, often in tents.
News Center Maine's 𝗧𝗨𝗥𝗓𝗦𝗧 went into the heart of the city to find out more about this growing problem and what leaders at the state level are doing to address it.
For 3 to 4 hours a day, 6 days a week, 𝗧𝗨𝗥𝗡𝗕𝗢𝗏, better known as Pastor Jeff, does this.
Hey, lurching along. How about you?
Connecting with more and more people on the streets who have no other place to go.
It's astonishing. It keeps increasing pretty much day by day, and the resources seem to be diminishing.
Pastor Jeff runs a small nonprofit ministry called Grace Street Ministry, handing out items from a yellow backpack.
Socks. Whole thing's full of socks. It's what I always have.
To the people who need them most.
We've really morphed into putting most of our funds into trying to buy tent heaters and propane, because unfortunately folks in the cold have been burning hand sanitizer to stay warm.
Things are at a boiling point, and you feel it on cold nights, you feel it on snowy nights, and you see people out there with no place to go.
Preble Street's Vice President of Social Work, Andrew Bove, says unsheltered homelessness is on the rise across the nation because of a lack of emergency shelters. He says no one is immune.
It could be your friend, it could be your neighbor, it could be a loved one.
Someone like 𝗦𝗨𝗥𝗏𝗧, who says she's no stranger to this situation.
My whole entire childhood, on and off, I was homeless. I didn't even know it. My mom did so good. It was all by herself. She had no help at all.
And once you're in that position, it can be hard to get out of it and into housing.
Oh, I have a voucher. I have good landlord references, and I can't find a place to live. It's crazy.
We're actively trying to help support other communities, other municipalities that want to do their part and hopefully reduce the overwhelming burden that is on Portland and Bangor.
Dan Brennan with the Maine State Housing Authority says his team is currently reviewing more than 30 applications for $21 million that will help establish longer-term solutions to homelessness across Maine.
We're not going to stop. We're not going to give up. We're not going to turn our backs once a particular program goes down. We just keep working every day to help as many as we can.
As many as possible, hopefully as soon as possible. In Portland, 𝗧𝗨𝗥𝗡𝗢𝗢, News Center, Maine.
The Maine State Housing Authority says selections for the money to establish longer-term solutions to homelessness should be made within the next few weeks. Dan Brennan hopes these programs will get underway before the cold settles in next year.
Homelessness is not just a city problem. Rent prices in more rural parts of the state have doubled or even tripled over the past few years.
I just realized I was talking and it was on mute. I'm going to need to get used to this. The audio playback was echoey in the last video, I noticed. Maybe it wasn't that big of an issue. I was just noting that I'm playing some videos from the past before getting into the present.
While the average person's monthly income remains relatively the same. And that has a lot of people facing homelessness asking, if I can't afford to live here, then where can I go? Here's News Center Maine's 𝗧𝗨𝗥𝗏𝗧.
49. The Johnsons seem like your typical family of 4.
These all your toys, Jay?
2 adults and 2 kids under the age of 10.
Hey!
But the place they've been calling home recently isn't quite so typical. It has 4 wheels and an engine.
And now we are 2 months
on this awesome journey. Been staying in our car.
Jessica says in April, her family gave their 30 days notice on their most recent apartment after experiencing issues with sewage water leaking into their bathroom and flooding the basement. She says they thought they would be able to find another place easily in the rural Rumford area, but so far...
It just feels like endless. It's like endless. You think you got your hopes up, and then something happens.
Something like new landlords refusing to accept the Johnson's Emergency Rental Assistance, a program that began in response to the pandemic to help eligible people pay for rent and utilities. But according to Maine Housing, landlords can't be required to participate.
Most places you go look at, you find a 3-bedroom, they want $1,600 for it a month, and then the landlord wants you to make 3 times the amount of the rent.
He says for
this is outrageous. Like, one, that... Okay, so the landlords can't be required to, but why would they not? I guess because they're looking for people that can handle 3 times the amount of $1,600 a month, which for the median household income in Maine, that's not feasible. I just don't... I don't get it.
them, that's just not possible. The Johnsons are living on a fixed income of a little more than $2,000 per month since Brian, Jessica, and their daughter received disability through Social Security.
Every month we're broke by the time the bills come through anyway.
To get help and find a community, the Johnsons have been coming off and on to the Beacon House Peer Recovery Center.
Disability is obviously no joke. That being said, those individuals are not mentally incapable. They seem like they've been under a lot of stress, but they seem with it, regardless of how much sleep or the quality of sleep that they've had. Disabilities shouldn't be the end all. Just because someone has a disability shouldn't mean that they can't also be a contributing part of society. And I'm not calling these people out. They seem like they're genuinely in a difficult place, and that's why I asked in this video for compassion and empathy. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of the root of why people are homeless, how to prevent it in the future, how to help those that are experiencing it right now, what we can do to get out of it. I have a lot of questions. I'm going to try not to pause the video too much, but I just want you to consider these things as well. And in a future video, then we'll come back together and talk about it. But for now, I just kind of want to look into it together.
Which has been around since 1991. It acts as a resource for people experiencing challenges related to mental health, substance use, and homelessness. Jenna Mason is the center's manager.
People become really vulnerable here, and it's been a very safe environment. The atmosphere is welcoming.
Mason says she has been in Rumford since 2006 and has recently noticed a growing need when it comes to housing.
More so lately, we've had people coming here. People walking in saying that they're homeless. A couple, we were able to give them a sleeping bag and a tent. Another, we were able to use our community funds to help them get a campsite.
As for the reasons why,
the new landlords coming into town, they're coming from out of state. They're raising up the rents.
The cost of living, the rents have definitely gone up over time.
𝗦𝗨𝗥𝗡𝗢𝗎 works across town as the director of homeless services at Rumford Group Homes, one of the only shelters in the area.
We've had a couple of families that have come into the shelter when I first started 10 years ago. Well, now their kids are grown up, having kids of their own. They've also come back into shelter.
A cycle of homelessness.
A cycle of homelessness is something to consider. I don't think it's a gigantic number, but that is something to consider, that if someone is homeless, it should be in the community's best interest to get the children of the homeless to be contributing members of society. for the betterment of all. It just feels better to contribute. And that's why those with disabilities shouldn't just have to sit back and not work in order to get this money. We should figure out ways for them to contribute so they can feel like positive members of society while still getting the assistance that they should have in a first world country, which in America, it seems hard to believe that we are right now, but you fake it till you make it. So we're a first world country, and we got to step up our game. And it starts with you and I, because no one is coming to help us. Let's be honest. It's up to you and I.
That can be hard to escape in this economy.
They're still going off the same salaries. They're still going off what everybody used to be making. It was hard enough for families to be able to afford housing, then, let alone now.
The poverty issues have just, I think, completely increased, from COVID, if you will.
Jolene Bedard with the United Way of 𝗥𝗘𝗓𝗕𝗢𝗓 County says she gets calls daily from people on the verge of homelessness.
It's heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking and hard to find solutions.
People that are on the verge of homelessness in rural areas, transportation is probably a barrier for a lot of people. And that transportation could be to jobs, it could be to a shelter.
And for those who do have transportation, like the Johnsons,
yeah, I want to live here.
Sometimes it's all they have.
My daughter's going to be turning 9 July 27th, which she does know we won't have a home for her birthday. So it's kind of discouraging.
That's News Center Maine's 𝗧𝗨𝗥𝗕𝗢𝗧𝗏 with that story. Jolene Bedard says if you're in need, there are places you can reach out to for help. She recommends calling, texting, or visiting the 211 Maine website. There you can find resources in your area for your specific needs.
The city of Portland is now removing
That woman's story is a hard pill to swallow because no one wants to have to raise their kids like that. No one wants to have to explain those kind of situations to your children. And as a community, and Maine is a community, I mean, we're 1.3 million people. If there's 6 degrees between everyone in the world, then there's 3 degrees between people in Maine. If you live in Maine and I don't personally know you, we both have a friend that knows each other. I almost guarantee it. And that can also be a beautiful thing because it keeps people accountable. It keeps you looking out for one another. It keeps you aware of each other. And I think those are things that we need to cultivate.
Moved 60 to 70 tents that lined a bike path off the Fore River Parkway. It's one of the longest lasting encampments for those experiencing homelessness in the city. Good evening, I'm 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏
And I'm Amanda Hill. City leaders say they tried to place everyone in the encampment into shelters before today's deadline, but only a handful accepted their offer. And now another area of the city is closed to camping, and many residents have no idea where they will go next. News Center Maine's Jack Mulmid joins us from Fore River Parkway with more. Jack.
That's right, Brian and Amanda. The city says they did not want things to go this way. They said that after offering 170 different opportunities for shelter beds for people staying here at Fore River Encampment, only 18 people accepted their offer. And now what we're left with here is pretty much the similar story that we've been seeing throughout this last year, which is the city going through and taking care of these encampments. Now, I spoke with people who did stay at this encampment, as well as different nonprofits, to find out why people don't say yes to city-run shelters in the first place.
Anybody need some snacks?
For Shannon and Rafferty with the outreach program, My Father's Hands.
I am ashamed of every one of the city council members, the mayor, the city manager who is allowing this.
Making sure unhoused people staying at the Fore River Parkway encampment have what they need is all she can do.
Get down there. We have a wagon with some medical supplies to get that hand bandaged up, okay?
Before
I'm getting kicked out of my tent here.
Ed Stewart says he remembers camping at Fore River years ago.
Like I said, I was one of the first people living down here.
And lately, as encampments on DOT property and at the Bayside Trail were removed, more people moved into the Fore River camp.
I woke up in the middle of the night and somebody stabbed me there. And
now, he's only able to use one arm, as volunteers with Preble Street helped Ed pack up. But before all of this happened on Wednesday, the city of Portland says it tried its best to take a different approach. The challenge to offer everyone shelter before closing the encampment. The city says everyone has been offered shelter, sometimes even twice, but only 18 accepted.
A lot of people say no to the shelter. The biggest thing I will say why is a lot of people are suffering from substance use disorder or addiction.
Drug addiction, but also an overall distrust in the system.
That guy literally was stuffing in a used needles container into his bag in the camera. Yeah, they're suffering from addiction. Look at that. Let me...
Best to take a different approach. The challenge to offer everyone shelter before closing the encampment. The city says everyone has been offered shelter,
okay, maybe
sometimes
he's just
even
using
twice,
it as a container,
but only 18 accepted.
A lot of people say no to the shelter.
I won't judge.
The biggest thing I will say why is a lot of people are suffering from substance use disorder or addiction.
Drug addiction, but also an overall distrust in the system. 𝗧𝗨𝗥𝗓𝗦𝗓, who used to be homeless, says.
So a lot of people refuse the shelter because they don't want to leave their lifestyle.
And most shelters in Portland won't accept you if you're using drugs.
You know.
Okay. So, drugs are making you homeless? I'm not saying anything about the rest of what we went through. I'm responding to what I just heard. They don't want to leave their lifestyle, and since homeless shelters don't allow drug users, only 18 people said yes out of the potential 180 plus because of drugs. You have a choice in this life, and drugs aren't a good one. Drugs are not a good one. So if you choosing drugs is making you homeless, you need to reconsider a whole lot.
I think there's a lack of trust among the unsheltered community and shelter providers.
Andrew Bove is with Preble Street. The organization was working to do outreach with the city to bring people into shelter. Preble Street says the city's efforts were only starting to show results in the last couple weeks and asked the city for an extension. The city declined.
If you offer someone a shelter bed and they turn it down, that's not the end of the conversation. That should be the beginning of the conversation.
But despite people declining shelter, Portland's longest lasting encampment is no more.
Where can people go when there's no place to go? Tell us, Portland. Where?
It's kind of crazy. It hurts.
Edwin, nicknamed LA, says while he packs up, he leaves behind his tent and his community. He says he was recently accepted into a sober house after being homeless in Portland for 5 years.
I hope that everybody finds somewhere to go that's safe for us.
Knowing that with drug addiction preventing many of these people from going to shelter, 𝗧𝗨𝗥𝗓𝗦 waits for help.
It hurts a lot. Because you see some people that are physically disabled, they can't even move their stuff.
Because it's going to be a long journey to find the help they need, and a long walk to find the next encampment to stay in the meantime.
Yes, people are addicted to drugs. Yes, people are mentally ill. That doesn't mean that they don't deserve the same compassion as everybody else, the same love and support.
Absolutely. Those individuals still deserve compassion. They are still human. However, reasonable people going through life don't opt to drugs, I mean, it'd be easier, wouldn't it? But we don't opt to that, so we don't get the benefits of using drugs, and we also get punished because we have to take care of the ones that opt into it. We have to talk about a civil society, and it's a difficult conversation, and maybe some people are going to hate me for this, but it's a discussion that we need to have.
And many of the people who did leave the Fall River encampment today told me they would be going to the Marginal Way Park and Ride encampment. I told them that the city is planning on targeting that encampment next and will be clearing it probably within these next few weeks. They told me they really have no other option, and that's why they're choosing to go there. Now, as for the city, they will be planning to debrief on their encampment clearing that happened today during tonight's city council meeting. We're live in Portland. Jack Mulmud, News Center, Maine.
Jack Mulmud tracking the story for us. Jack, our thanks to you. That Fall River Parkway, by the way, is just one of several areas the city considers an emphasis area when it comes to encampments. It says it will now focus on the one at the Park and Ride on Marginal Way. You'll recall about a month ago, a large partition fence was put up so that commuters could still use half the lot while those camped there could have a little more space. But that lot may be cleared out as well in a couple of...
Those commuters help pay for that public lot, but they're making room for homeless people. The thing is if you take this to an extreme, any group of squatters can come into any area and take over. I understand these individuals need help. This is not the way to do it. It's like having a headache and you're taking a medication that's side effect may reduce headaches, but its core solution is something else. This is not the solution. So it's a good thing we're having these discussions, y'all. This is going to be a long video, I think. I didn't want it to be.
Of weeks. The city is also keeping an eye on smaller encampments that have popped up near the cemetery on the Western Prom and at Harbor View Memorial Park, but there are no plans to clear those out anytime soon.
Y'all, I don't even know what to say. So let's just keep watching for now.
11 days, City of Portland and state staff are scheduled to clear the homeless encampment on Marginal Way. Right now, it is the city's largest collection of tents at more than 100. City staff say they are trying new ways to get people into shelter. Good evening and thanks for joining us on News Center Maine at 5:30. I'm Alex Haskell in for Zach Blanchard.
And I'm Chris Costa. For people who work, shop, or play in the Marginal Way area, that crisis has spilled over, affecting their livelihoods. I've spent months speaking to business owners who say they've had to make significant changes while they wait for the city and state to address the emergency.
The most significant impact it's had is on the mental health of myself and my staff.
The trauma of watching humans suffer every day is taking a toll.
Frustration is what comes to mind first, with a deep acknowledgement that it's a really complex problem. Yeah.
Kristen Mastrufis is one of several business owners who work right across the street from Maine's largest homeless encampment.
It compounded and it compounded and it compounded.
The emergency is at her doorstep, forcing her to make changes to keep her staff and customers safe.
We are so deep in an emergent crisis. We did what we could. We got Narcan on site. We held safety trainings for our staff, but we also don't have the tools. And so that's why we went to the city to ask for the support.
She's not the only one. As the encampment has grown, businesses have hired security guards to protect items from being stolen and people from getting hurt. In some cases,
like a whole new industry is starting. Private security guards.
I think that it has definitely grown to a point where it
people
is
that are in those homeless
becoming dangerous
encampments
for
attacking with
the
weapons.
people who are in the encampment, as well as the people who are in the surrounding area. We see that.
City staff have been working to correct misconceptions about the Homeless Services Center. They say that effort has gotten more than 16 people into shelter beds in the last month.
We're trying our best to get them into any kind of shelter or housing. But that is, yeah. No, but we are also acknowledging that 2 weeks away at this point.
The people living in tents are struggling with unmet physical and mental health needs, including substance use disorder. Neither the city nor the state has the infrastructure in place right now to help everyone who needs it.
This is a public health crisis, and we need to look at it like that and try a really holistic approach to address it for the individuals who are there, but also systematically. And city staff, I know, are working on this, throughout the day, throughout the week, 24/7, quite frankly.
Portland's Director of Health and Human Services has requested Governor Janet Mills to call in the National Guard because the city's shelters are full every night.
We can't wait. Like, the call to action is now, and waiting is what got us into this crisis, right? Like, it's a tall order.
Like the state needs to step in?
Absolutely. But I trust that if the Director of Health and Human Services is asking for that support, then she needs that support.
So we talk a lot about the people who are in the encampments for sure, but we are the Health and Human Services Department for the entire city of Portland, and that includes both the housed and the unhoused. And so how can we address this issue and really work to solve this for both communities?
Yeah.
Kristen knows both communities personally. Her loved one was once in that same position, homeless and addicted.
I know it's not easy. I know it's complex. But the complexity of what's happening in our community is going to require a lot of solutions.
Governor Janet Mills' senior housing advisor says her administration has put a total of $55 million into what's called the Emergency Housing Relief Fund since it was created in 2022. That money is intended to help expand support for shelters and other efforts to help people experiencing homelessness. In a statement, Greg Payne wrote, quote, "The governor remains deeply concerned about homelessness and Maine's housing crisis, and she's committed to continue working in partnership with the City of Portland and other municipal officials on both short-term and long-term solutions to these issues."
Obviously, this is so complex. There's so much to it. I will point out that in the midst of that, I found this.
Meantime, hundreds of more refugees are expected to come to Maine in the year ahead at likely twice the rate we saw over the past year. That's according to a state agency. CBS 13's Asia Reed is live in Portland breaking down those numbers and the challenges for organizations that make it their mission to help refugees. Asia.
840 refugees are expected to come to Maine in the 2024 fiscal year. That's according to the Office of Maine Refugee Services. Now, that number has doubled since 2023, where we saw around 420 refugees in Maine. Now, refugee service groups are scrambling to prepare for them to come in time.
America, they ask me, you have money? I say no, but my dream. I start a small store, and then I grow. I'm so happy.
𝗥𝗘𝗖𝗢𝗕𝗢𝗔, or Mama Shukri, opened up the Mogadishu store in 2006, selling groceries and household items. She moved to Lewiston as a refugee in the early 2000s from Somalia, along with her 8 children.
We have been prepared to welcome new refugees into our state.
Executive Director for the Maine Immigrant and Refugee Services in Lewiston, 𝗦𝗫𝗓𝗏𝗏, says this is what they're all about, welcoming refugees with open arms. Though there are challenges with numbers doubling next year. There's 3 resettlement groups splitting the incoming refugees. Catholic Charities of Maine will take around 500. The Jewish Community Alliance, 140. Osmond says they'll get around 200.
It's not going to be easy. We have families of 8 or 9.
Housing Director.
Families of 8 or 9 coming into our state when we are literally having one of the worst homelessness situations in our state's history. How can the Catholics and the Jewish people feel okay about what they're doing, bringing in people into our state where we already have problems where people are already suffering. Like,
For the Maine Immigrant and Refugee Services, 𝗦𝗬𝗘𝗦𝗧𝗜𝗍𝗗 says more refugees means they'll need more housing. Right now, they're scrambling to connect with more landlords, and if landlords don't have enough housing available, 𝗧𝗘𝗦𝗧𝗜𝗍 says refugees will be put in hotels.
We already have a housing crisis. Now we are inviting in more refugees in order, and then we need to come up with housing for them. Who's in charge here? Who's in charge here?
Every night that you have a family in a hotel, we have to be accountable for that cost.
𝗧𝗘𝗦𝗧𝗜𝗍 says they also now need more volunteers to help pick refugees up from the airport, connecting them with housing and jobs. They'll also need more donations this year to help refugees furnish apartments.
There's a list.
We need to come up with jobs, transportation, housing, blankets and pillows and sheets. What about those that are literally already suffering, that have been suffering for years, that are either veterans and need help, those with mental defects, those mental health issues? It's not a defect. We're all a little defective in a way. How can we strive to help others if our shit is not aligned? How? Riddle me that, Joker.
We have to go by. We can't leave out that fire extinguisher. There have to be smoke alarms. You have to have clean bedding and, new pillows.
Refugee service groups say that the state is getting one of the smallest amount of refugees compared to other states nationwide, though Maine does have one of the smallest populations. Coming up at 6, we'll hear from an expert on the difference between refugees and asylum seekers in terms of federal funding. Live in Portland, I'm Asia Reed, CBS 13 News. Back to you.
Asia, thank you.
Federal funding. That's what we're worried about. Give more to everyone else except for the fucking American people. The born, bred, hard-working American people. Whether you be Catholic, Jewish, Muslim, Protestant, black, white, square, circular, it doesn't matter. Like, if you're born here in America, you're born, bred American, hard-working American. You have earned your immigration status. You've earned your green card. We come first. Why is it that so many of my tax dollars are going to fund wars I don't agree with, to going and helping individuals that I'm not particularly compassionate towards when I'm looking out of my front windows and I see someone else I could be taking care of, but my tax dollars are already allocated elsewhere? What is going on? So, I mean, we do need to call this out. This is a longer video. I agree. And we still got more to go. So buckle in.
It's become a growing crisis in Portland. Homelessness putting a strain on those living on the street as well as on city services. Police say calls to homeless camps have increased nearly 300% over the last year. The I-Team's Dan Lamparello looks at the cost and possible solutions.
Chrissy Russell has been living on the streets of Portland for a little more than a year.
Horrible, yeah. I'm not used to this, I've always had a place to live.
For months, she camped on the city's Bayside Trail behind Trader Joe's.
You were one of the first people here. Did it shock you how many people ended up on this trail?
Yeah, it did. And slowly, but it just, all of a sudden, I woke up one morning and it was like tons of tents over there around me.
An encampment that gradually expanded was quickly forced down by the city last week.
It's a lot harder to see this right here, people's stuff getting tossed.
The city blaming a rise in crime, violence, and drug use, eventually labeling it an issue for public health and safety.
shelters are at capacity. There's nowhere for people to stay, so it turns into campsites.
Major Jason King heads up the Portland Police Patrol Division, which at the Bayside Trail alone saw a 280% increase in calls for service, from 39 in 2022 to 150 this April, which included crimes like weapons possession, a stabbing, and indecent exposure.
It just puts a strain on resources.
That's true citywide. Right now, Portland is helping to house more than 1,100 homeless and asylum seekers at a cost of more than $40.
1,100 homeless people and asylum seekers? And that's not the police's job. The police are supposed to maintain the tax-paying citizens. Everyone is home. There are many people that are homeless for many different reasons. This is a complicated situation. That being said, when 180 plus homeless people, those people experiencing homelessness, and only 16 to 18 of them take up the offer because their lifestyle won't allow them to live in that housing, we clearly have a drug addiction issue. We have a mental health crisis, and we need to look at why, beyond the people. Those are just some of the outliers, because there are many people that are homeless because they just cannot afford where things are going, the economy. BlackRock and other real estate groups are buying out all of these single family housing units, and then you have to rent it at exorbitant prices. It can't be sustained. So there is a video on short-term rentals coming up, and so it is a complicated issue, but damn, we need to talk about this.
$30 million, but hundreds more remain unhoused and in need of city services that are already stretched thin.
The need is grown, and I don't think it's getting any better.
Bill Burns is the substance use disorder liaison with Portland Police's Behavioral Health Unit, a group specially trained to help divert calls from the police and connect with those on the street.
We're able to kind of get out on the street, develop relationships, develop trust, so that when the timing is right, we can have hopefully a place for someone to go.
Burns' team has seen their contacts with those experiencing homelessness or substance use disorder increase 134% from 2022. That's an average of 4 new people in crisis reaching out for help each day. Calls that would have fallen on an already understaffed department.
One person that we got connected, his calls for service went down 84%. Another guy had 11 calls for service in October. In April, he had 0. Right? You can impact these situations, but you have to have the right mix of services.
Homelessness is bad for everybody.
Steve Berg with the National Alliance to End Homelessness says their research shows Maine has seen a 165% increase in its unsheltered homeless population since 2007. He says the impacts are widespread and are also hitting hospitals.
They end up bearing the cost, and in a small community, that kind of cost for the local hospital can be devastating.
Maine Medical Center tells the I-Team it doesn't track how many people experiencing homelessness seek treatment in its ER. But across the country, experts say those visits are rising.
As a city and as a state that continues to see its homeless population grow, what is the solution here?
Well, I mean, I think the solution is actually pretty well established. If you instead spend money on getting people housed, getting people who can come to their homes and help them with in-home supportive services and with mental health treatment, that can save money in other ways.
Savings that could help save lives and bring stability for people like Chrissy Russell, who says she doesn't know where to go from here.
It's overwhelming. I'm kind of glad to be leaving.
Now, the police department's behavioral health unit is making more connections by the day and is looking to add 3 more people to their ranks.
As for supporting housing in the city of Portland, the city manager is proposing a more than 6% tax increase to help with general assistance in next year's budget, a rate that could climb even higher if the state legislature doesn't take action on reimbursement rates this upcoming session. For the I-Team, I'm Dan Lamparello. Greg?
An important issue, Dan. Thank you.
It is an important issue. And it is so complex. There's so much to it. Mental health and drug abuse are obviously two aspects of that. But I pulled up some videos that some of you may or may not agree are part of the issue. Let's get into it.
It's no secret that living in Maine isn't affordable for a lot of people. And this week, Maine Housing released a report to guide for policymakers and potential
9
home
months
buyers.
The Maine Housing Outlook Report for 2023 dives into several industry sectors. One of the topics the report looks into is home ownership. According to the report, the median sale price for a single-family home in Maine was $334,000 last year. That's up 13% compared to 2021.
That is so expensive.
When that median price was $295,000.
Median.
The Federal Reserve also raised interest rates 7 times in 2022.
The report explains that when interest rates are high, home prices are expected to be flat or fall. But in Maine, there is a low supply of homes for sale, which could contribute to prices rising again in 2023. Maine Housing says there are programs available to help. Its First Home Loan program provides below-market interest rates and down payment assistance.
The first home loan, the first home buyer's loan, it's kind of a joke, especially for hardworking Americans, hardworking Mainers that want a decent place to live. The loan is pretty strict. I tried to use it myself. It doesn't go well.
The report also dives into renting and affordable housing, development, home energy costs, and homelessness.
Maine Housing says it will present the full Outlook report to the Maine legislature. You can read it for yourself on our News Center Maine website and app.
So they have it so you can read it, but not so you can look it up, so you can discuss it.
There's really no better way to experience a city than to live like a local. Short-term rentals like Airbnb, VRBO, and others can offer that for visitors and income for owners.
It is the mom and pops. And so one of my good friends is a retired vet, and he is able to live in Portland because he lives in the apartment building and the other units are short-term rentals. That's how he can be here.
Britt Vitalius owns Vitalius Real Estate Group and 3 short-term rentals.
For the same reason, first-time home buyers can't find a house. That has nothing to do with the Airbnb market, the short-term.
It has nothing to do with it? Nothing. Sir, nothing?
It has nothing to do with the Airbnb. Same reason, first-time home buyers can't find a house. That has nothing to do with the Airbnb.
That's not going to age well.
Market, the short-term rental market, it's part of the fact that there is not enough housing. I think in most situations, short-term rentals are not creating the situation. There is a big housing shortage.
Many Maine communities are evaluating the impacts of short-term rentals, either through capping, eliminating, or regulating them, and their presence in the market has very divided opinions.
I think optimally, Portland would have no Airbnbs in it, and those would all be long-term housing units.
Buddy Moore with the Maine Democratic Socialists of America and the chair of the Livable Portland campaign says the number of units set aside in Portland for short-term rentals present a unique solution.
I think that there are a lot of folks like myself who are poor working-class people in Portland who look around and they say, hey, I don't have anywhere to live. I don't have anywhere that is affordable for me to live.
It should be tenable if you live in the state, if you work in that city, to be able to live there. It shouldn't be that you have to be from out of state and have multiple streams of income in order to exist there. And then if you have a whole city that's just based after tourism, the very blood of that beat, the heartbeat of that city, is going to flounder because it's all going to be based off tourism. Winter months, Portland doesn't get a lot of tourism, so you have to have a living base. Like, it is such a holistic viewpoint. You have to look at all of it. You cannot just micromanage these aspects. Who is in charge here?
Live, and yet there are these housing units that sit empty for days and weeks at a time.
In total, there are roughly 18,000 rental units in Portland. 400 is the non-owner occupied cap on mainland short-term rentals. Any one owner cannot have more than 5 of those. And that's only about 2% of available housing. While it doesn't sound like a lot, some argue that 2% could make a huge difference.
I think it's starting to become much, much more of a palpable issue as we see more and more people either pushed into housing insecurity or pushed into houselessness as a result.
Palpable, hot button, controversial, just a few words used to describe it. In our reporting of this story, we reached out to at least 15 short-term rental owners. We wanted to ask about their decision to register for a short-term rental and the impact they think they've had on the housing market. Many turned down our request, citing fear of blowback, becoming a target, or negative attention. Some look at this argument as the benefits of economic gain against the protection and wellness of people who need safe spaces to live. But both sides seem to agree on the need for better public policy.
I would love to see some of our mayoral and city council candidates speak to this issue. I think there's been a deal of lip service in the past several years about it. We've seen 3 referendums in the past few years trying to sort of reel in these short-term rentals in our city.
We've got to figure out policies that will help us move in the right direction and curb the situation so that first-time home buyers can buy a house, that renters can find an apartment, and that everyone can be housed.
That guy wants a utopia. He's not realistically with it. Like, I don't trust this gentleman. Whoever you are, I'm just saying your argument makes me... It's a utopic dream. Do I want that same thing? Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, how are we gonna get there? Ew, that slow grin. Oh, no. Oh, that slow grin. It was...
There's really no better way to experience a city than to live.
All right, see you then. Now to our top story. Becoming a homeowner has not...
We have to worry about our citizens. Maine cannot be made up of a state of people that are from out of state. You cannot have Mainers be slaves that produce so that people can come here and tour and vacation and have fun. Like, we have to do something. Who is doing something? Governor Janet Mills, what are you doing?
Not been an easy feat over the past few years. Low interest rates during the height of the pandemic drove more and more people to want to move to Maine and buy a home. And that demand was met by a lack of supply, ultimately driving up prices.
But experts say there is some hope that the 2023 housing market will look a little more balanced. News Center Maine's 𝗦𝗨𝗕𝗦𝗖𝗥𝗑𝗕𝗎𝗏 reports.
This one was from 10 months ago. I should have put it out to the front of it. Optimistic. So I wanted for us to revisit 10 months ago and compare to what it is now. So you have all these out-of-staters moving here during 2020 because it was just untenable to live in the state that they were in. So they have a lot of money if they're moving from San Francisco or Boston or LA or Atlanta, Chicago, any of those suburbs even. They're moving here to Maine. their median income is going to be far higher than the median income of Mainers. Therefore, you're displacing Mainers in their own states. And then so many people with money from out of state are realizing that they can buy properties in Maine or other small rural areas around the world. This is a global issue. So I know this is Maine-centric, but this is a global problem that we need to consider. What are we doing about short-term rentals, and what is it doing to the people that live there? Because if you're having a rise in homelessness and a rise in short-term rentals, you have to look at and compare the two and see if there's any causality. Is one affecting the other? If you got rid of the one, would the other continue? Or what would happen? So this is out of order, but let's get into it regardless.
For realtor Corey Lee, this is a regular routine.
Beautiful hardwood floors in the dining room.
Showing homes in central Maine that are almost guaranteed to sell.
It just got a little hectic out there for a few years.
Lee got into real estate right before the housing market exploded in 2020. He says now it's starting to feel a bit more normal.
We're starting to see it get to pre-pandemic levels, 2018, 2019.
In its latest report, the Maine Association of Realtors said home sales were down almost 29% in November of 2022 compared to a year before. Experts say that deceleration could allow the housing market to level out in 2023, but stock available is still an issue.
We're very disenchanted right now.
Michelle and Dave Thorne of South Portland have been looking for a home that doesn't require a lot of renovations since 2019. They say they're getting frustrated.
Saving is a challenge because we're paying top dollar for rent, which includes no utilities.
Still, experts say potential home buyers shouldn't give up hope.
I don't know that it's going to go from a seller's market to a buyer's market. I think that we are heading toward a balanced market, and that is the best place for everyone.
A place most people have been longing to reach.
The market is starting to stabilize, and so I'm seeing my buyers get into houses at asking price, maybe slightly above and sometimes even below. I absolutely am very optimistic about where we're heading.
Optimism after a few tough years. 𝗦𝗨𝗕𝗦𝗖𝗥𝗓𝗏, Youth Center, Maine.
From the people that I talk to, whether it's at work, at a bar, or traveling, it's not highly optimistic. People are continuing to rent rather than buy because they just can't find it. Also, Jim is home, so now Lincoln is going crazy. So I need to pause it for a second. My fiance coming home distracted me, so I'm not entirely sure where I left off. Let's go anyway.
There is some other positive news. Cynthia Verino says interest rates have hit their peak and should go down a couple of percentage points by the end of this year. She says there are also some helpful programs available to first-time home buyers in Maine. You can find out more on our website and mobile app.
This is not a research video. I'm just laying it all out. In December, should I have time, I really hope I do. It may be early January, who knows. I would like to dig into what was said and then the outcome and what we're looking at now. Because some of these forecasts just don't seem to be accurate, because I know so many people, young couples, young families, trying to start life like every other generation before us. And we're crippled, we're handicapped, we have so many things facing us. And so it kind of hits home because a lot of this generation feels that. And then the older generation, the ones that aren't working, if you're not getting a steady paycheck, then you're worried about homelessness. So it's such a all-encompassing issue. That's why we really need to focus on this.
are getting a snapshot of the employment situation in Maine. According to Maine's Department of Labor, the 2.8% unemployment rate from October is relatively unchanged from the month before. It compares to the U.S. unemployment rate in October of 3.9%. The unemployment rate in Maine has been below 4% now for almost 2 years. Non-farm wage and salary jobs have increased by about 1,100. And the Maine DOL says that total is now at an all-time high, around roughly 650,000.
I don't understand how this is. We have record low unemployment rate, yet help wanted signs out the butthole, and then more and more people going homeless. Somewhere in the formula, things are not going according to plan, and we need to figure it out quickly.
Some good news for the labor market in Maine. Not only is it seeing record low unemployment, it's doing so consistently. Maine's Department of Labor released job numbers today for the month of July. The unemployment rate was a record low 2.4% for the fourth consecutive month. And according to the DOL, unemployment has been below 4% for 20 consecutive months, the third longest period of rates that low.
So again, I don't understand the numbers. The numbers and actuality and what's playing out and what they're forecasting, it's not matching. I actually meant to play this first, but I guess we're going to play it last.
Well, new this morning, city councilors in Portland shoot down a proposal that would have allowed the homeless population to camp on public property in the city.
Good day, Maine's Johnny Mappy is live outside Portland City Hall, where that meeting went late into the night and just wrapped up a few hours ago, Johnny.
Yeah, that's right, Katie. It wasn't voted on until well into this morning, and it was not without controversy.
Excuse me, do we have an officer? Yep, we have an officer. What are you doing?
Well, that's a classy protest. A struggle fest to get onto the desk. To do what? To say that homeless people should be able to lie or encamp wherever they want? That is not the way to get your... That is not free speech, one. So it's not covered under the Constitution. I hope you get arrested. This is deplorable behavior. It's not how you get what you want. You look like a spoiled child that needs a spanking. Am I wrong? Comments below.
A so-called protester stormed Mayor Kate Snyder's desk last night, and just for reference, our own 𝗦𝗦𝗘𝗢𝗕 tweeted out this video just before 2 a.m. The public comments period lasted until after midnight, and then the proposal was shot down 6-3. Councilors for the proposal, like 𝗥𝗘𝗖𝗢𝗪 said,
I would have tased her.
Do not help
like
get
she's
people
resisting.
into shelters, but ultimately
her.
The health and safety concerns were too concerning for the majority. Portland Police Chief Mark Dubois, who was seen taking the woman who climbed onto the desk away, says the Casco Bay camp has had a total of 188 calls to service, and just yesterday there was a robbery with a machete.
Please do not keep moving the camps or closing them down. It makes people do desperate things that they wouldn't normally do.
A tent outside in the freezing cold is not a...
Hold on. I think the quote was down here. Please do not keep moving camps or closing them down. It makes people do desperate things that they wouldn't normally do, says William Higgins with Homeless Advocacy for All. Okay, insert another subject. Please do not keep moving the I can't even say it. So replace camps with closing them down with another kind of assault. Hey, don't keep shuttering your businesses because these shoplifters are going to go to extreme lengths to get what they need to do. Get what they need. Don't make it harder because they're going to do worse things. Like, that is not a good argument. I don't know if I got across what I intended to get across there, but I do think the ones that understand me understood that. Because you cannot just kowtail to these people. Don't keep moving the camps or closing them down. It'll make them desperate. Don't keep shuttering your doors or hiring private security. They're gonna get crazier. That's not a good argument.
A resource. Every member of that community that dies this winter of freezing cold or an assault or a drug overdose, that'll be on you, and that'll be on the advocates for this solution. It's not a solution.
So we're also learning about a lot of numbers from the fire department and the police department about these calls to service and how much it's costing them in the city. For those of you interested in that, we will be breaking some of those down coming up at 5:30. Now, there's also no date as of right now for when the city will clear out the Casco Bay Bridge camp, and there is a new shelter opening up November 29th. Jeff Cady will check back in with a lot more info about this meeting.
Johnny, thank you.
There is clearly a lot to talk about here. I tried to reserve my feedback as much as I could. I definitely still offered my opinion up. It is my channel, so if you don't like, keep scrolling. That being said, I hope you do appreciate this channel, and I hope you do appreciate what I'm trying to do, because I'm trying to shine light and bring to the awareness of the average Mainer and American and world citizen the issues that are at hand. And the faster we admit to these issues, the faster that we can start focusing on how to fix them. And we can get a concerted effort to make it so that these aren't problems for the future. Of course, they're going to continue to be problems, but I see the drug use and mental health are paramount. So we need to look at drug abuse, why it's happening, and mental health and what we can do about it. And if we focus on those things, I think that we can start figuring out homelessness. It's not as simple as that. It's far more reaching, but we have to start somewhere. And I'm the kind of individual that if you see some monumental task in front of you, like there's so much to organize and whatnot, you just have to start with 1 square foot. Like, okay, I got this square foot. Let me clean it. Let me organize it. Then you get that all nice and tidy. Then you're like, all right, I'm feeling good. Feeling good. What about this square foot? And then sooner than you know it, you have many square feet. It's not as easy as that, but if we all join together, honestly, it could be. This was a long video. I will give you that. I'm going to try to edit it to give a little bit more pizzazz and Shazam in there to keep your attention. But the truth be told, these issues should keep your attention regardless of what I do. So if I don't keep your attention and the problem persists, it's not on me, it's on you. So let's all get together and see what we can do about this. So my empathetic and compassionate friend, I hope you have a good night, and I will see you in the next video.